Hello and welcome to the Pinstripe Post. My name is Ryan Sampson, but he is the star of the show, Joel Sherman. Today is Monday, August 19th. The Yankees go 3-3 on their road trip against the White Sox and Tigers in a brutal loss last night at the Little League World Series. And we're here to talk about it. Joel, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Ryan. I'm probably better than you, since you described a singular loss in a long season as a brutal loss.
I think last night's loss, Joel, encapsulates a lot about this Yankees team if we could dive a little bit deeper into it. So, this Yankees squad, we've talked about it so much. There's the highs of the highs and the lows of the lows. And we're trying to figure out how is this team? Where is it at? But talking about last night's game, the first thing I want to ask you about the Jasson Dominguez situation. I don't think I've ever heard a manager come out before a game after you get the news that they're calling up Jasson Dominguez to play in last night's game as a 27th man, which again, I've never heard of for a Little League World Series game. And it has to be a position player. So they call him up because they're facing a Cy Young contender in Tyler Skubal, right? A strong, very tough lefty to face. And the Yankees stink against lefties. So you call up Jasson Dominguez, who is a switch hitter, can hit against a lefty. And then you say before the game, we're going to send him down after tonight. And this is what's interesting. Dominguez is batting fifth last night in the lineup. So, Joel, what the heck is going on last night and the Yankees and Aaron Boone saying, yeah, we're going to send him down again after this game. We just need him tonight against this really tough lefty.
So how would you have handled it? Who would you have brought up and what would you have said?
It's not who would I brought up. It would have been what I wouldn't have said. I'm sending him down after this game. It's mixed messaging. Yankees fans have been clamoring for a guy like Jasson Dominguez to come up because
Now
Alex Verdugo has been struggling.
Right? Now they're unclamoring because he struck out 3 times and double clutched on the throw home, right?
He double clutched on the throw home. Again, another decision that Aaron Boone decided not to put Alex Verdugo in the outfield in extra innings when you knew he's your best defender. So again, where the hell is the manager?
If I was guessing along with what Aaron Boone was doing and I wasn't in Detroit, my suspicion is he didn't want to have a situation where Dominguez felt like he had to go out there and go 4 for 4 with a homer because that's the way he would stay on the team. He wanted it's a 27th man. It's like bringing up Ron Marinaccio for a.
But you're talking about the Martian. You're talking about one of the best prospects in baseball.
But again, you have to bring up somebody on your 40-man roster. You got to deal in the real world. I do this all the time. So you would have brought up who?
I would have brought up Dominguez just like them. But the thing is, I wouldn't have said before the game, yeah, we're sending him down no matter what.
And then if Dominguez went 3 for 3, what would you have done?
Then I would have said, you know what? It's a decision we might have to, because there's a bigger thing here, I think, Joel, and that this is what a lot of fans are calling out the Yankees for. They're playing this game of we need an extra year of control. We want 2025 to be his rookie year.
Extra year of control with him. That's not what's happening.
How do you say it's not? Look how bad the left Verdugo's been offensively for them.
But within the context of what you could do, would you bring him up and release Verdugo?
No,
you've got to deal with 13 position players.
Send Ben Rice down. Send Ben Rice down. Call up Jasson Dominguez.
Talking about LeMahieu playing first base every day.
Yes, I mean you're paying him that much money to do that.
Yeah, I think they're kind of screwed because they have too many players not performing. I think the idea that the Martian's going to come up and solve problems is based on 7 games where he hit in the way that Ben Rice hit for 7 games. And, every fan base, it's not just Yankee fans, has magical thinking that, their prospects are going to be great until they're not. And then when they're not, they complain about like, why aren't our prospects better? I think the Yankees are all in this year. I think they're making a judgment that Jasson Dominguez is not fully back and or a configuration that would have LeMahieu as a full-time first baseman when he could hardly get the ball past the pitcher's mound most days is not one they want to do. I mean, it is, we've kind of poo-pooed Tommy John surgery, but it is something significant to come back, especially for a young player who has to get a swing from both sides down. I think that there's a problem of rules. You could only put a guy on your 40-man roster for the game. You'd like to take a shot at having some lightning in a bottle, somebody hit right-handed against Skubal. You don't want to have the kid who pressed, it seemed anyway, or Skubal just dominated him, feel like, play great and you'll stick around. And so I think if they say nothing and he goes 3 for 3, they're screwed. If they say something and he goes 0 for 3, they're screwed. This was a screwed situation. Like, they would have been better off without the rule where you get to have a 27th man. The one thing I would say for sure is they're not playing service manipulation games. If they thought Dominguez could help, like, I have suspicions about this organization on everything, Ryan.
Yeah.
I don't let them crawl out of shit that I don't think, whatever. Like, if they thought Jasson Dominguez could help, would they really be playing, well, he'll be arbitration eligible earlier? Or
it's because the 28 game, I think it's like 120 at bats or something stupid like that. People have done the math. It's August 29th or September 1st is when the Yankees are going to call him up, because that's the minimum amount of bats he'll have that he won't be able to register as a rookie this year. And they'll say,
well, that's about rookie status. Rookie status is
that's what I'm saying.
Well, rookie status is for rookie of the year. Control status is about days on the roster.
I'm sorry.
It's a different.
I meant rookie status. That's ultimately what this seems like the game they're playing here with Jasson Dominguez.
Again, they don't care about rookie status. They care about control status, which is based on days of service and years of service. So right now, they're underneath a service time where he would qualify for a year. I think if he didn't have Tommy John surgery, he would have been on the team from the beginning of the year, right? Like, they wouldn't have probably traded for Verdugo. So they weren't going to manipulate his time if he didn't have, they were going to play him all of last year, in which case he would have built up that time to get closer to both arbitration and free agency. He had an injury. I think this is this grievance society looking for a reason. And I don't put things past the Yankees. I think they're full of shit publicly all the time. We've done a lot of shows together, Ryan, but I think they're in the game of trying to win. And if they legitimately thought that he would be a big difference in winning within the constructs of what's possible, this is a, hey, let's go to an extra outfielder, put Verdugo on the bench or release him, which would seem obscene, a little crazy right now, but release him and play DJ LeMahieu at first base every day, and let's click our heels and hope at some point Anthony Rizzo comes back on September 15th and helps. I think at this point, they're still hoping that against righty pitching, Ben Rice could give them something like good at bats, draw a walk, maybe pop a homer and that the configuration of the lineup is better this way. Is it? I don't know. There's no crystal ball, but I'd be going this way if I were them. And I'm no fan of Verdugo. And I think Ben Rice is up here a year too early. But for everything, I just think they have a group of players, position players right now, where they have two great players. And Hall of Fame level players, and they have a real problem. You see it when they don't score. They have so many guys who don't get on base regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have, I was looking at it, Ryan. They have 4 players who have essentially the same slash line. Volpe, Oswaldo Cabrera, Trevino, and Verdugo all are like 230, 240, a 285 to 300 on base percentage, 365 to 400 slugging percentage. Like, that's 4 guys. That's when they're playing, that's 16 plate appearances a day with guys who are 30% on base percentage or worse. The one thing you want to put in the lineup once you have Judge and Soto is guys who get on base to get to them again. Right. So they bat more often, and then to bat with guys on base. And they simply, even Stanton, who has a good slugging percentage, it's 230 with a 290 on base percentage. And you're just sitting and saying the one thing they don't do is get on base enough to assure more plate appearances for their 2 great players and more plate appearances with them on base. It's been a problem. And I just think a lot of the problem is a Volpe problem, because I think the hope was that he was going to be a better player by the Yankees offensively. He hasn't been. And, Glaber's hit a lot better, and that's why he's hitting leadoff with all the other problematic stuff he brings to the party.
Because you can't do Verdugo leadoff anymore, because that's been an absolute disaster. Other things that I noticed here this week.
Really hated that trade. I know that.
What's that?
I know one of the two of us despised.
I know. It's come to fruition to what you said. He's been the exact same hitter that he was last year. So the other things I noticed is Trevino. so you talk about lineup. That he comes back from the IL. He plays 2 out of 3 games against the Tigers. Do you have an issue with that? I mean, this is Austin Wells. We've talked about has been arguably your third best hitter on your squad the last 2 months, and you'd sit him 2 out of 3 against the Tigers. Now, granted, I know you said he's been playing a lot of baseball, so you'd be interested to see like how they manage this over the next couple of weeks. It's a little shocking though that he doesn't play 2 out of 3 again in this last weekend.
Shocking? I'd like to know what you think is really shocking, if that's shocking.
I mean, really shocking again was for me the Dominguez thing last night. Watching him double clutch the throw was shocking. Obviously.
Again, I wasn't in Detroit. I haven't talked to Yankee people about it. But if I were guessing along, again, I'm just guessing along here. My guess along is I believe they're off today. I believe that Trevino will catch Cole. So he comes off the injured list and he catches Cole. That's the guy that Cole's probably most comfortable throwing to. And I think he's going to catch 2 out of 5, and Wells is going to catch 3 out of 5. And just on a point where, the Sunday game, you want as many righties in as possible against Skubal. He did switch Wells into the game once a righty came into the game.
Right.
And I think he's probably thinking, Wells has played a lot. I'm going to line up Trevino with Cole and have him face the lefty. And if it all works perfectly, Wells gets not off like 4 out of 5 days, and then once we hit Tuesday, it's off and running. I would be surprised if he doesn't catch 3 of the 5 starters round and round, and Trevino catches 2 of the 5. And I think that works as somewhat of a standard situation for starter and a very good backup catcher in Trevino. Trevino starts in most places. He's a very good player, and the other thing to keep in mind is on the 2 days Trevino plays, in a close game late, Wells is going to hit for him against the righty. So Wells is going to play 60%. My suspicion is Wells plays 60% of the starts and gets into a good deal of the other 40% of the games. And I just think the way the weekend worked, Cole on Friday, tough lefty on Sunday, day off on Monday, it was an opportunity to try to deal with a lot of situations. I think by the time we do the show next week, then I'd be shocked if he wasn't playing 3 out of 5.
Certainly something we're going to be paying attention to. And I know you're saying, what would you be shocked? I'd be shocked if Wells isn't playing more than Trevino this next week. Other thing I wanted to touch on, Clay Holmes last night. I mean, he looks good for a little bit, and then again, he just gets himself into trouble, and we get into a tie game, we go to extra innings. I think I'll ask you this and do up in a little bit, but just Clay Holmes and last night, his performance, I don't know, Joel. He's 10 blown saves. It's the most in baseball. I mean, what more are we gonna say about Clay Holmes? The Yankees chose not to address the closer position or a really good strikeout guy at the deadline. And I know you say like Ryan, who do you want them to go get? There's not easy to get bullpen guys out there. You say it's all in. I don't know, Joel. Like, I guess I'm being an ignorant fan and saying, did you do enough truly to address that closer position? Because you're riding or dying with Clay Holmes, the guy who has the most blown saves in baseball right now.
Yeah, like the danger always is funny, Ryan. Luis Severino is going to be the guest on the podcast I do with Heyman this week. And so I just kind of was going through old files on my computer about stuff I've written about Severino. And in 2014, I think it was 14, forgive me if it was maybe a year later, it's Cole Hamels is available. And the 2 players that the Rangers, I think was it the Rangers or the Phillies? Maybe the Rangers are asking for are Luis Severino and Aaron Judge. And at that point, New York didn't know anything about Luis Severino and Aaron Judge. And it would have been easy on the 2014 version of the Pinstripe podcast to say, well, they're all in. Why don't they just trade Judge? Why don't they just trade Severino? And of course, that turned out to be, Severino almost won 2 Cy Young Awards for them. Judge has turned out to be an historic player for them. And we didn't know who they were. And I'm with you. I think they needed to be all in. The other problem is perhaps this. For Tanner Scott, who would have been the clear kind of lefty / strikeout guy late, did they have the level of prospects even available to do this?
That's a great question.
Because if you are going to take some level of, let's keep in mind, the Padres have done a shitload of trading over the last 36 months with AJ Preller. Really, the entire time Preller's there, but specifically in this period. But they've never traded Jackson Merrill, right? Like, you got to know the ones not to trade. And they've kept Merrill. And so far, he really, in this group, as opposed to the previous group, he traded, when he first became GM, AJ Preller, he traded Max Fried, he traded Trey Turner. You could make really bad mistakes along the way. And so I don't know what Spencer Jones is going to be. And I also don't know if Miami thinks Spencer Jones is any good. Like, could you have even traded him for two? I think it's very hard if you think the guy is going to be a better than average major league player for a sustained period to trade him for 2 months of a reliever who you're not 100% about, no matter how all in you are. Like, it doesn't feel like that's the kind of thing you do. Now, it might turn out that Spencer Jones is a bust, but we don't also know what Miami thinks about him.
Right.
Or what they think about George Lombard. These are first-round picks. We should note that the Yankees have done better on first-round picks. Wells, Volpe, Clark Schmidt. They went a long time where they got nothing out of guys. And they've gotten stuff out of guys. Trey Sweeney. Maybe the problem is this. Flip it over to another thing. They traded Trey Sweeney in spring. There was a spring training already, or just before the season.
Just before the season, yep.
And got the lefty from the Dodgers.
Victor
Gonzalez.
Victor Gonzalez, yeah.
And Yorbit Vivas. Now, if they don't make that trade and they have Sweeney, do they get Jack Flaherty? Because they have Sweeney. So, everything's interconnected. And let's give the Yankees this, because they've been all in. They've traded a lot of prospects over the last couple of years. Like if you go back to, say, starting with the Jameson Taillon trade, and I'm promising you, I'm not doing that just because Jameson Taillon was the guest on our podcast last week, but because they gave up 4 pieces, including, I think, 2 pitchers who eventually pitch in the major leagues. How much pitching they've traded from the Jameson Taillon trade through giving up the guy Jack Neely, in the Cubs trade for Leiter, and Neely is pitching really well at AAA. I wouldn't be surprised if he's up with the Cubs at some point soon. I would argue they probably traded more pitching than anybody. So you get to the trade deadline now, where you just don't have the collateral that you did. But I think it was a Tanner Scott. Like, if you look at the group, was it anything more than Tanner Scott or bust? So, I think I wrote a column about that, where it's like, if you're all in, you got to find a way to Tanner Scott. But he felt like the only one. Am I missing someone else who you feel like they could have acquired in this kind of cycle, who you'd feel like really good being out in the 9th inning against anybody? And I'll say this is, let's see Tanner Scott in a big spot as we get more games important in September and October. But stuff-wise, he would have walked in as the king of the Yankees. Like, just stuff-wise, where you could have trusted him for the last 9 outs based on stuff. And I go back to something, I'm sorry, I'm long-winded on this one. I'll go back, we talked about it last week, Ryan. I think just about most Yankee problems can be solved this year in some way, like in some form. I don't know that they could solve the bullpen issue. I don't know that you're going to get to the postseason and feel like, hey, I think they have a really strong way to get the last 9 or 12 outs of a playoff game against a good offense. I think if you're a Yankee fan like yourself, Ryan, you're going to be doing the Luke Weaver, Tommy Kahnle. Tim Hill, who's released by the White Sox, he's got to get Gunnar Henderson out right here, left now, and I think that's the situation. Unless Luis Hill ends up in the bullpen.
Is that the solution? Is that if Clark Schmidt comes back, do you put yourself in that situation? You say, Luis Hill stuff is just too good, where we could see him potentially being that 8th, 9th inning guy.
I think you got to get there. We're
still
a couple of weeks away from getting there. I think you got to see it. Looked like Hill's stuff didn't have that ride the last time he was out. He was ton of foul balls, like he wasn't blowing it past people. So, we got to see. We've never seen him run the marathon. You got to see him run the marathon also. Then you also got to believe that he can make that quickie transition from starter to, because there's no sense of putting him in the bullpen if he's not pitching important innings. So you're going to do from starter to get big outs in the last 9 outs of the game. It's not an easy transition. You do want to preserve his arm for the future. He's a part of your future. I think that they have a problematic bullpen situation.
Yeah, and Joel, that's going to bring me to the do up part of the show, where I want you to rank the 3 things that honestly concern you of over this last week. And to be frank, it's the bullpen. I specifically wanted to highlight Mark Leiter, who had 7 2/3 perfect innings pitched in July with the Cubs before being traded to the Yankees. Since then, he has a 6.48 ERA in 10 games. He has not pitched a 1-2-3 inning yet since he's been a Yankee. De Los Santos got DFA'd already. And now we see Jazz Chisholm in an unfortunate circumstance. He's now on the IL with an elbow injury, and you hope that he comes back in the minimum stay, but we'll see. TBD. So the bullpen is one thing I wanted to highlight there. Anthony Volpe, you talked about him a little bit. He is one of the bottom ranked position players. If you look at his Baseball Savant page, it's all in blue, right? It's bad. And then Yankees versus lefties again. I mean, this lineup cannot hit versus lefties, and maybe it's something to what you're talking about. It's just a bunch of guys, position players, who are playing well below average baseball. If you were to rank those 3 things right now that really do concern you the most, how would you rank them?
So I want to keep in mind, and I think we're going to try to talk about this at the end a little bit, but there's 6 teams within 1 game of each other for the best record in the major leagues. It's astonishing. And then the Twins aren't far below that. The Royals, I've never seen this kind of traffic jam at the top. There's not going to be a great team. And I could just say this. If we were doing the Orioles post or the Dodgers post or the Brewers post, every team has flaws, even the 114 win Yankees. They just had fewer.
No, yeah.
I think everybody's got them. And who can close up? I think this was the theme of last week. Who closes up the holes to try to do it? If I were ranking those, my number 1 concern, because I think it's so important to 2024 and moving forward, is Volpe. And here's why. I'm not at peace why a hardworking, serious kid whose bat-to-ball skills were his attraction. He doesn't have slumps. He has death spirals, right? He doesn't have the, like a 4 for 24, but then he's back. He has weeks of looking absolutely lost, and he's in the midst of it again. And it has been one of the great roller coasters of the first 2-3 weeks of the season, then a month. Well, I mean, but the month isn't hitting 205. The month is hitting 105 with a 35% strikeout rate. And then it's up again. And then it's going into the All-Star game down again. And then it's out of the All-Star game up again with some power. And then it comes so quickly.
It's a crash
from it. And I think Volpe and the Yankees have to get to the bottom of like, is this who he is?
Mm-hmm.
If he is, then he becomes somebody you're like, okay, he's fine. He'll be a 3-WAR player, but now he's replaceable. Like, if we could do better, you need to do better. Right?
Right.
And I don't think I would do it.
Okay.
I don't think I would do it. But I would have a meeting about, would it help Anthony Volpe to go to AAA for 2 weeks away from this? Can we survive with Peraza and Cabrera? If I'm in the meeting with the Yankee people, I'd look and say, do Peraza and Cabrera, like when Volpe's in this situation, we're not going to get less offensively. Do we get enough defensively from that duo to kind of play lefty-righty a little bit for 2 weeks and bring Volpe back? If he like in a situation where it's like, Anthony, go down there. It feels like you're between 3 swings, 3 thought processes, 3 whatever. Get it together. I don't think I'd do it, but I would certainly have a meeting about doing it and want to hear from my senior baseball people their best mission statement for or against on it.
Is there maybe a lesser way of doing that, in that you sit him down for like 3 out of the next 5 games and you play Peraza at shortstop, you play Cabrera at shortstop?
So you said you were shocked about the Wells thing. I was surprised, and not because Peraza hit the home run
Right.
on Friday, but I thought it was an opportunity. I would have played Peraza all 3 games over the weekend. As
After the Volpe
the,
drop? Oh my
uh,
God, Friday
but
night?
again, like I don't want to base it on like the home run or the drop. I just would have seen it as a chance to be like, uh, play Peraza, play him at, even though it's a righty, and then third base against a lefty, and just give Volpe a day off. And maybe two, not to feed him to Scooble, where you just say, okay, we'll put Peraza at shortstop, put Cabrera at third, put LeMahieu at first. And by the way, when I say that, it's like, wow, like this is a team near the best record in baseball. Think about the freaking infield they're putting out on a regular basis. And it's really the contingent of players. You see how much the loss of Chisholm is hurting them. Though Chisholm, of course, was coming back down to earth at the point of the injury, but he
Right.
gives them some easy power, another lefty back.
Athleticism, and he also had over a 1 OPS. I mean, he was
Yeah.
still playing good baseball for them.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's like when him and Wells were going, it at least lengthened the lineup a little bit, especially against righty pitching. The Volpe question's a big question for 2024 and 25. I mean, it's a big question. And 26 and 27.
Yep.
And, like if you want to start, you're talking about the trades, banging your head about trades not made with Volpe over time. And but the other thing I want to say is Volpe is vouched for by baseball people from other organizations, not just the Yankees, who I trust. And I will always want to point out, it's like, go look at, and obviously this guy had an off the field issue recently, and I'm not dealing with that. Like Jarren Duran, kind of like the light switch went off at 26, 27, 27, 28. It is possible that Volpe is going to need 1,000 or 1,500 major league at bats to kind of like find out who he is as a major league hitter. And then all of a sudden, I keep wondering, does he end up being a Jarren Duran type player? Who's like a good defender, a good base runner, who's a 30 double, 10 triple, 20 homer. You like having him on your team, and you don't want to give up on it too late. But the Yankees are so all in, Ryan, that I think they have to have a meeting and say, does this kid, would we be doing better by the organization and the kid to give him a 2-week, go down there, no prying eyes, let's put our best internal hitting coach with you and just like figure out an approach, man. Because it just feels like he's between theories. And we're a bad place to be against major league pitching, in between theories.
Yeah, and I think it maybe Joel, I'm thinking too much into this, but it feels like ever since when Volpe won that spring training job over Peraza, right? When those two were going at each other for who's going to win that shortstop position a year ago, it just feels like ever since then the Yankees said, nope, that's our shortstop every single day. We're penciling him in, or not even penciling, markering him in every day, no matter what in the lineup. He's our everyday shortstop. We're going to ride or die with him. And to your point, and that's the bigger question, since you're all in, and does it hurt you more to have him in every single day? Because I think the mental errors are becoming part of the regular with him a little bit, where it's like in a spot where you drop a routine fly ball. I mean, I understand you don't want to highlight it, but for us as Yankees fans, when you see that happen, you're like, whoa, because now you're starting to worry, are the offensive struggles carrying over into your defensive game a little bit? And is that going to really start to hurt this team when games become more important down the stretch when you are in such a tight battle for the division?
Yeah. For the first time, Ryan, I think, and again, it's a perception, and how wrong perceptions could be, is I think that it is impacting. Now, does it lead to a drop pop-up? That just might be like sometimes even the best players screw up on the most obvious stuff. But it does seem to be wearing on him. He's wearing it now. And I'm wondering if that's part of the extension of slumps, is because I think that his hunger, desire stuff can't really be questioned. And I think he probably at his core is confident in a kid as he's traditionally been. He's got to be feeling, I'm letting a whole team down. I'm kind of blowing this. Because, Ryan, say he was just league average offensively.
Mm-hmm.
His on-base percentage is 315 to 320. That would be a big difference. That's 30 to 40 points. I mean, he's in like the 285, 290 range, right? It's like that would be a big deal if he could just be major league average with an on-base percentage when you have Soto and Judge in the lineup. It just feels like such a big issue that they're not turning the lineup over enough and putting enough people on base. And so Volpe is a short and long-term thing, and I put him at 1. I don't think that they could solve the bullpen. I think bullpens are crazy. Jose Leclerc was all of last year, and then all of a sudden he was just dynamic down the stretch and in the postseason. So who knows? Maybe Tommy Kahnle's about to go on the greatest run of his life.
Luke Weaver's been incredible. I will say he's been a fine for them.
I always use this example. I wrote a book on the team, so I'm very, very familiar with the team. The 96 Yankees, like Graham Lloyd was as bad as you can be during the regular season. They didn't want to put him on the postseason roster. We helped them win a championship. Brian Bovringer, David Weathers. These were guys who pitched great during the 96 postseason. And I think if we sat here, Ryan, and we look back and said 2022, 2021, we'd find 2 relievers on a championship team where we'd say, because we know how volatile it is. It's about having a good 12 to 15 innings maybe for an entire month. And could Mark Leiter have his Cub July in October? And all of a sudden you're thinking, what a great trade. Maybe. Does Lou Trevino pop up here and get some key outs?
Scott Efros, Ian Hamilton.
Like
Nick Birdie.
Maybe. But I don't have any idea what the ESPN lead announcer was talking about last night, where he kept talking about how great the Yankee bullpen.
That was brutal last night.
I was just like, you gotta, I get it. You might ask around a little bit, people who watch the team regularly, because this
handed him that stat packet and said, "Here you go. This is the Yankees bullpen right here."
Because I think this is the worst Yankee bullpen in 10 years.
I agree, Joel. It's literally like you said. I know me and Hogan are doing this. We're literally praying and watching every time. And I know Tommy makes fun of me, but like as soon as Clay Holmes comes, I'm like, here we go, Tommy. Here comes the Clay Holmes experience, because you just don't know. You really don't know what you're going to get out of this. Listen, that's the way rank due up. I know the last one would probably be Yankees versus lefties. Is like your of the 3, like you probably rank it 3rd there, comparing Volpe, bullpen in there. But
I mean, it's an issue. If a team has a lefty,
that's where I'm getting at here a little bit.
They're going to throw it against the Yankees. Like, I don't think it's accidental. We're seeing more and more of them pop up on the Yankees schedule. And it's everything. It's every sport. If you can't guard a 3-pointer, yes. Right? If you can't stop a left jab, if you can't stop our running game, you've got to make other people stop doing things. And it's a lot about Stanton. It's a lot about Volpe, and I don't know if those are trustworthy figures for them down the stretch to make the opposition pay for the decision to start their whoever and bring in their Tim Hills.
Yeah, I mean, you have to pray if Stanton gets hot. He has to have another postseason where he's just like, the guy, you can't pitch to him. Like, no matter what, he's going to hit it. You have to pray that you can get into that type of...
There's a lot of room between here and the postseason. They need to take care of some business now.
It doesn't feel like they want to take care of that business right now.
Well, Joel. They want to, but like, you're a victim of who you have on your roster. Mm-hmm. And, I'm sure in the offseason, if we keep doing this, we can deconstruct every move that got them to this point. But these are the people you brought to the dance, so you better figure out how to waltz with them.
Yeah, listen, I mean, Radio Irrational for me was going to be about the trade deadline, but I think we hit on it a little bit there, or a good amount, where you talked about, Tanner Scott was the one thing you could have really gone after. It feels like the bullpen, like you said, it's a big question mark. They didn't address it as much as you would have hoped for.
Like here's one I've been thinking about. Like,
yeah,
the Tanner Scott one, and I don't know what I would do. It's like, I'm not sitting with all the information the Yankees are, but would you have traded, and I don't know that the Marlins would do this, but would you have traded Ben Rice for Scott?
Absolutely.
Yeah, like, I wonder if that gets it done.
Is Ben,
But then the Yankees could be sitting and saying, "Hey, we actually think Ben Rice is going to be a 750 to 825 OPS guy for a while, the kind of cost containment guy that's going to allow the signing of Soto over the long term." Where they've got to play like a multi-package of information, not just we need Tanner Scott right now. But that I kept thinking about what can they trade that is not from a diminished prospect package to go get something. And I kept coming back to, did Rice because I go back, Stick Michael, who really was so kind to me over the years. And there's so many baseball things in my head float around that are Stick Michaels. And one of them was, he used to say all the time, the most important organization to know is yours. You better know yours, right? So that you trade Russ Davis, but you don't trade Jorge Posada or Bernie Williams, or you trade Sterling Hitchcock, but you don't trade Andy Pettit or Mariano Rivera. You know what I mean? It's like you've got to know yours, to the point again where we're talking about the Padres. You don't trade Jackson Merrill. You trade a slew of people, but somehow Jackson Merrill standing there in center field for the team leading the wild card in the National League. So anyway, I've thought about Ben Rice's value a lot from late in the trade deadline and even now. Like, what is it exactly?
Yeah, it's an interesting question to pose. Would you be willing to trade someone like that, and do you see him like down the road, like you kind of justifying Anthony Volpe, like how do we you chose not to trade him a couple of years ago, and now you're trying to see, do we let this play out the way we want it? I that was my radio rational with the trade deadline, but I think you kind of hit on everything I wanted to talk about there. So I want to go to Hoganalytics, bring in Tommy Hogan, our stat guru, and he's going to talk to us with some stats with the Yankees.
They're doing construction up on this apartment above.
You know what? Tommy's doing construction on some stats, so I'm going to have him bring in some stuff. Tommy, what's up, man?
Well done. What a segue there, Ryan. So a guy that's been mentioned a little bit that I wanted to highlight is Oswaldo Cabrera. He's played a lot more in the last week now because of the Jazz injury. But in his last 19 starts, and goes back to June 22nd, he's only got 19 starts since June 22nd. He has a 313 batting average, a 373 on base with an 806 OPS. That would put him fifth out of all third basemen in baseball with 80 plate appearances. That's fifth in average and sixth in on base. The only Yankee with a higher average in that span is Aaron Judge. The only Yankee with a higher on-base slug and OPS than that since June 22nd is Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Austin Wells. Three guys we all like, the 2, 3, 4 hitters in this lineup. So, Joel, I ask you, once Jazz Chisholm comes back, does Oswaldo Cabrera deserve a tryout to win that first baseman job? Because nobody else, DJ LeMahieu and Ben Rice, have not grabbed that position yet.
Yeah, so it's one of my favorite subjects is Oswaldo Cabrera, because I'm completely on the guy, as people who've listened to this know. I am so high on baseball IQ, and he has it in droves as a young player. That guy shows up. He never has a bad day. He's ready, whether he's starting or not. I think he's going to, at minimum, be Marwin Gonzalez in his career, somebody who you say, yeah, that guy was a really useful player for a long, long time. And I would not put it by him that it could be more, because he's really a well above average third baseman defensively. Now, I don't know if he'll ever have enough bat to justify playing that unless he's playing third base next to Corey Seager, where you're getting offense at shortstop, or Jose Altuve and you're getting offense at second base at a level where maybe you could afford to have whatever he'd bring at third base. Because I wonder if there's diminishing returns if he does play all the time. I'll just give you a quick thing. I'm trying to remember. He batted lefty versus lefty recently, and I saw him stretching before a game. And I went up to him and I asked him, I said, why did you go lefty versus lefty? And he started laughing, and he had by the way, in his second language, great thoughts about why that lefty was someone. He was like reverse splits. He had taken a lot of batting practice left-handed. He was just feeling in the moment more comfortable. And if you remember the back, he doubles down the third base line, lefty on lefty. And I was just so impressed again with a guy I'm already impressed with the thought process that he went to be lefty on lefty there. So can play on my team. I would certainly like to play him more to see if it might turn out, Tommy, that he's a 300 plate appearance, move him all around guy, and that's how you get the most out of him. But on a Yankee team where, as Ryan and I have said a lot across here, I'm looking at a lot of 235, 290, 345 slash lines. And by the way, that's kind of Cabrera's overall slash line, someplace in there. Can he get hot? I mean, 2 years ago, he was starting playoff games.
Yep.
And he has two things that I absolutely love in a player. He's got the high baseball IQ, and he isn't afraid. So if he fails because he just might not be a starting major league player. But he's a good player. He's a good player. And I would, with some of the alternatives that are at the Yankee disposal now, those guys would be losing at bats to me before Cabrera. And Cabrera would have to show me, if I gave him 10 straight days or 2 straight weeks, by the second week, he's a backup player. I need to see it. But I'm okay because I'm getting backup level production at first base and left field and, too many places already. So I would play him. I am an admirer of the player.
So you are interested in seeing what he would look like at first base?
It's not a position he's played a lot. But that has never seemed to throw him. It's one of the things you like about him. So,
right.
Hey, go play the outfield. You haven't played a lot of outfield. He did it fine.
He'll play the outfield.
Right?
Yeah.
Like he was fine out there. I just feel like he's a term that would drive all my analytics friends crazy. He's a baseball player. He's good at playing baseball on a team that too often is not great at playing baseball.
Yes.
Oswaldo Cabrera is really good at playing baseball. And I would, with the alternatives they have now, like the Yankee goal should be to turn him into the 10th man eventually by having such a good team that you sit and say, wow, team's so good, Oswaldo Cabrera is the 10th man. Because I do think he's going to be Marwin Gonzalez, where it's like, left fielder's out for 2 weeks. You got to play him? Fine. He's off the bench to run, to hit, to field at 3 or 5 positions over the course of the season? Fine. He's ready. And talk to his teammates, talk to his coaches and managers about who shows up, doesn't have a bad day, ready to play. You're never going to get, with that player, the stuff, we've done enough shows now. The stuff that bothers me when I watch it. Not that kid.
Yeah.
That kid's ready for the game emotionally, with some fortitude, with the attitude of let's win the game. What do you need? Switch hitters, got a little speed.
Got a little speed. He probably had the most exciting play of the week that we haven't mentioned. Scoring from second base on that sac fly was awesome. That was a lot of fun.
So, Tommy, think about that play. How does Alex Verdugo go from second to third base? How does Trent Grisham like the thing that makes that possible is Cabrera's running hard from second to third and assuming nothing because it's baseball. Don't assume anything. Play it to the whistle. Play it until the ump puts up his hands and says there's no more action. Oswaldo Cabrera ran hard from second to third, which makes possible to score on that play. How many Yankees would have run hard from second to third?
You're right.
Right, because that's the only way for that to happen is if you kind of assume, fly ball advance and do the, I'm so cool, look at me, do this over to third base, the potential for all the things. Like, that's a weird play where the guy made a really good catch, but like topples over.
Right.
But, how many times does a guy, hurry it, and now the ball's skittering through the infield? There's a difference as if you're still moving from second to third base as opposed to you went to third base, rounded it, and you're like, the ball's skittering through the infield. Go. Until they blow the whistle, until they lift their hands, play. That's why that kid is a valuable piece of a baseball team because he's a baseball player. And he's really good at it at a young age. And you watch so much on all teams, including the one we do this webcast about, where you just sit there and go, it shouldn't be it shouldn't be acceptable to Hal Steinbrenner. It shouldn't be acceptable to Brian Cashman. It shouldn't be acceptable to Aaron Boone. It shouldn't be acceptable to anyone in the clubhouse, starting with Aaron Judge, when you watch it and say, well, see how he just did that?
Mm-hmm.
Like 90 feet should matter to us. That kid just did that right.
Yeah, some players use...
when they're showing all the shit, if you're in the clubhouse on the televisions in the clubhouse, that play should be on endless loop and say, this is how we think we should play baseball.
Well, some players use, you mentioned it, the outfielder toppling over as a reason to be able to jog into third base, and Oswaldo Cabrera used it as a reason to score from second. If I could just mention one more thing that hasn't been mentioned yet. Joel, have you ever heard of a player being allergic to their batting gloves?
No, but I've heard about players being like allergic to like chemicals that are in things.
Right.
So,
that's why he's allergic to them, because there's a few chemicals in them. It's crazy. Him and Jasson Dominguez.
Yeah. So, just seeing the crazy thing, I went and lifted to get my kids a Christmas tree when they were little, and the pine went up and down my arm, and that's how I discovered I'm allergic to pine.
Wow.
So you could have all kinds of stuff you're allergic to, you don't even know it. So I've never heard it, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some percentage of people who are at least a little and don't even know it. They get an itch or whatever.
Yeah,
we went off on a tangent here.
You can see, well, yeah, we did. You're right. But you can see his hands are all taped up. Maybe that ends up being the solution for Verdugo. Don't wear batting gloves, Alex Verdugo. And then all of a sudden he turns back into the 270 hitter he had been the last 3 years.
I love Tommy's theories. He's getting into them. He's getting in the weeds here a little bit about batting gloves.
Crazy. He's allergic to his batting gloves. And maybe his tattoos, too. It's bizarre.
I don't know. I'll see about that. Tommy,
can play on my team and can't play on my team. That's pretty much the theories on here.
Thank you, Tommy.
No problem.
All right, Joel, let's bring this whole home. Joel's notebook. I wanted to ask you about the larger picture here in baseball, because we are dealing with a lot of teams. The top contender teams are all pretty much of the same record here. And you had talked about it last week, Ryan. There's no team on pace for over 100 wins in baseball right now. And we're still at that similar rate right now for all the top contending teams. And I know you wrote in a great column here about, in the Post about the top contending teams. And there's a theory why you don't think these top contending teams are running away with that best record. Can you talk more about why a team like the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Guardians and all these teams that are at the top of baseball, why they're not running away with their divisions and ultimately the best record in baseball?
It's not even 100 wins. I don't think we're going to get anyone to a 600 winning percentage, which would be the first time since 2014 that's happened, or 15, one of those. It's been a decade. It was a week ago that I wrote it, so I'm trying to get things. So there's a bunch of different theories including that maybe it's just an aberrational year.
Right.
But if it's not an aberrational year, the things that came up most often were there's less, it's just funny to say in a year of the White Sox, there's less terrible teams. There were 26 teams playing 450 or better.
Right.
At the time I wrote this. Now, I don't know if that's still true today. That would be a record. So, you used to feast on the White Sox, and back then, not long ago, you played 19 games in your division to feast on somebody like that. The Twins and the Royals are in races because they're 12-1 against the White Sox. Now expand that. What would it be? Would it be 18-1 or 17-2 if there were 19 games? So, I think the expansion of the playoffs has led to more teams trying. So you have more teams playing 450 or better. Where they're going for it, because especially the last 2 years, they saw a 6 seed in the National League
make a run to the wild card,
get
in to the World Series,
and make the World Series. The one that this was my theory, because I looked at the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Orioles, and the Yankees, and they all had the same thing kind of happen to them to kind of cause an incredible dip. It wasn't just the Yankees who went through one of these. The Phillies went through one where only the White Sox had a worse record for a month than them. The Dodgers played 500 ball for about 50 games. The Orioles, as you know, the Orioles haven't run away with this division,
nope.
Even as the Yankees have done this, because they've had it. And it's about starting pitching. And to me, we're seeing a confluence of things. The injury rate has remained high. So there's guys who are lost for the season from the outset, and at every stage of the year, they're out. So you're losing, like the Orioles began the year without their closer, who needed Tommy John, and then lost 3 starting pitchers to elbow surgery. 3. That's 60% of your rotation, right? You lose it to it. The Dodgers had a period where they started 11 different guys, 11 different starting pitchers in 33 games. 11 in 33 games. And as we know, the Yankees had that moment where up until the point where Cole comes back, they're like doing great. And then they go down. And I think we have injuries. I think that we have a lot of guys who are being, like moved from bullpens to starters who might not know how to run the whole marathon, or coming back from injury, like Luis Hill, like how much can they give you, etc. But I think the biggest thing is we live it in the grip it and rip it society of throw every pitch at max effort, which then leads to 5-inning starts, 6-inning starts. We're going to wear out our bullpen. Like it's funny because the analytical people would tell you they're people who look at it from 10,000 feet. But the most un-10,000 feet thing in the world is to play every game in a grip it and rip it thing with no feeling for what that will mean for, do you have anyone available to grip it and rip it tomorrow? And I just think we've just gone through a Summer Olympic cycle. We have trained a lot of people to run 100 meters, and then we go, now run a marathon. And they're like, what? And I think guys get hurt for that. I think that guys lack the durability. And I think we are losing the ability to have duration both in a game and in a season, where it's almost like you get to the midpoint now, and it's like, and that's why the Zach Wheelers and to this year Garrett Coles are so special. Because they give you 100 pitches every and a minimum of usually like 18 outs, and they do it 30 times, and they do it at the highest level. But there's so few of them now. So now you've got to get through 1,450 innings each team, and in a max effort, throw it your best pitch on every pitch. You will win battles, but I do wonder about the duration of the war. And so even the best teams, you just can't have enough pitching. You can't. Like the Dodgers are incredibly well run. You can't start 11 guys in 33 days and expect that it's going to go well. The Orioles, have really stockpiled young talent. Well, you just can't lose 3 starting pitchers. It's hard to survive it. And I think as long as we live in a world, and so I think this is now with us. Will teams win 100 games and play over 600 ball? Of course. But I think the ability to kind of be an elite team, you know what teams are now? Teams are a little bit of Anthony Volpe, right? Like it's like, wow. Like you kind of don't see it coming.
Right.
Like every team, and it's like, good teams all have periods where they don't play well, but it used to be like, oh, okay, we had a bad 3-7, 3-9 stretch, but then they're back on it.
Mm-hmm.
And now, like Volpe, it's like, well, it's been a month. It's been 5 weeks. It's been 6 weeks. And if I had to apply what I think is causing it, I think it's starting pitching and just you pitching in general, but that's a domino, right? When your starters don't pitch a lot, and now all of a sudden you're saying, it's the Yankees lose last night because it's this chain of, and by the way, Stroman pitched well. And
he did. It's
right?
2 starts in a row he's pitched well.
Like every time you say, well, we need 3 relievers in a 1-run game to pitch well. We need 4 relievers in a 1-run game to pitch well. What's the chances that a guy, like let's say that Clay Holmes is a guy who pitches well 7 out of 10 times, and that Tommy Kahnle does that, and Luke Weaver does that, and you need John Heyman on. He's good at doing the exponential thing with the math. But 7 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 7 out of 10. What's the likelihood that those guys are going to match up?
Right. And stack up perfectly in a game for you.
In a game. And like, who's the 3 out of 10 today who's about to just crap all over?
Right.
And and I just think you do it enough, and it's hard to play consistently at say like 620 ball, where you're pretty much that team all season, and it's heightened by not having terrible teams. So it's like, you can have a bad day against the White Sox, or you can have a bad day against the Rockies and still figure out a way to win. But it's a little harder to have a bad day against the Nationals, who are playing 450 ball and have some real talent, or like
the Oakland A's.
Every team in the NL Central, is like in a place. And it's just, so without terrible teams and without enough pitching to get, especially starting pitching to get through the season, I just think it's harder to be like, kind of like, hey, we're pretty good at being a team that wins 6 out of 10 games all year.
It's definitely an interesting theory, Joel, about the starting pitch. I do think the quality is down. And like you said, we are in a grip it and rip it era where a lot of guys are asked to throw that perfect pitch every single time.
You couldn't go to like Baseball Prospectus has like a season full, like their injury tracker. You look at it and Ryan, I would encourage it, just like, it's an alphabetical order by team, and you could see like who's still out at their bar goes all the way to the end. And if you just roll your finger down it and look at forget about pitching, just starting pitching that is unavailable right now, where you say the quality's down. Well, of course the quality's down. Like if I say I'm going to remove the lead singer of the top 50 bands in the world, music is going to be down, right? Like, and that's, you just kind of, oh, that's right, this guy's not pitching and this guy's not pitching. And soon you're up to 40, 50, like if you get to 60, that's 2 a team. Not pitching right now. Not like, oh, they were injured in April. Like they're not available and someone else has to get in there and do this. And there's a reason they weren't one of the first 5. Now, maybe it was because like Paul Skeens wasn't ready to be one of the first 5. But usually it was because you were the 6th starter or the 7th starter or the 8th starter. That's why you weren't in the rotation. And once you start going down that, no matter what profession you're in, where it's like, oh, we're going to do our 8th best choice to be cook this meal, play in this band, be your eye doctor. Like you don't want the 8th best choice, you want the best choice. And so I just think there's so many days now where you just sit there and go, oh, those are the 2 starting pitchers, huh? Oh, those are the relievers that are being brought in. That's all interesting. And I just don't, and without terrible teams or fewer terrible teams, I think it's hard to be consistently good.
Would you think that the 6 inning minimum is something that will affect it too? That these guys can't get through that 3rd time in the order? That how teams are thinking are we too analytical in the fact that we can't trust you after that 2nd time through the order? Like that's the way the analytics say.
Yeah, I want to put more thought into it. I want to talk to more people about the theory. I've talked to some people about the theory. I want to talk to some more people about it. I come back to something over and over again. It's probably, again, a show for the off season when won't have games. I keep wondering, let's make a subtle change to the distance of the mound. If it wasn't 60 feet, 6 inches, if it was 60 feet, 9 inches, and the rubber was contracted to say a foot so that people couldn't get to the extreme right or the extreme left. And so the tunnel that every hitter saw the ball out of narrowed. And it was a little further back. So, I don't think it would cultivate arm injuries because, of course, pitchers aren't throwing to a glove. They're throwing through a glove anyway. Those extra 3 to 4, say, inches. I wonder if that would give a little more recognition time to a hitter and a better view of the ball because we narrowed the tunnel of where the ball could conceivably come from. If we were thinking about a way to get, because we're still talking about like, how do we get the ball in play more? And then if that I'm doing that, does a pitcher then have to say, I just can't be grip it and rip it? I have to think about some finesse now.
Yeah.
I have to think about another way to get soft contact. And I would think about that. At least now, I want to think about it more.
Yeah.
Like I haven't talked to the people I truly trust about any rule change enough to kind of take me through the 6 inning start to feel like I could give you a confident and competent answer on if that would work and what all the pitfalls would be. Like, I don't know, my guy gets hurt in the second inning. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
He's got to be on the IL for how long? But I mean, he really legitimately just twisted his ankle a little bit. He can't go on, but he'd be ready in 10 days. I've got to lose him for a month. Like, you've got to, it feels like there's some ramifications there that are troubling to me, where I think if I made, you would not, there's not, the most dedicated baseball fan in the world would not notice if the mound were 3 inches further back or 5 or whatever you might think would give that extra tenth of a second of recognition for a hitter to put the ball in play more, and therefore would convince the pitcher that I can't just throw it hard or spin it hard. I have to think about placement, precision, movement, etc.
Yeah, it's
just and I would do it in coordination with shrinking the mound.
Mm-hmm.
Like the
no, yeah, I understand.
Because again, I think you see so many of the different variety of arm angles where it's just like, and no pitcher pretty much works from mid rubber anymore. Everyone's is at an extreme. And if I could, I'm looking to eliminate some of that extreme. I don't know, just, and by the way, I'm not at peace that that's even the right thing to do. But I don't think I still think we're trending in the wrong way where the ball isn't in play enough.
No,
as
it's
a sport I love.
Yeah.
Where I want to see action.
No, I know the trend is definitely troubling to see. And it baseball games like last night, very boring, 1-0 game all the way into the 9th inning. And you're like, get this game over with already. Joel, thank you so much as always for going all around Yankees baseball with us. We got the Guardians this week, pretty big games this week. Then they got the Rockies, and we're looking forward to talk to you again next week, man.
All right. We're going to see how much Austin Wells plays.
That's right. Thanks, Joel.
All right. Be well.